Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Houseman, and I'm the President and CEO of Strategic Communications Group. I will be your host for this special online event entitled How to Embrace Corporate Storytelling for Impact and Influence. Strategic Communications Group has expertise in an emerging area of the market commonly referred to as web to sales. This is how companies like yours align its web presence, content creation, social media participation, search engine optimization, digital communications, and analytics with tactical sales activities. We help marketers who sell to business and government customers more quickly identify and nurture sales-ready leads. You can learn more about us by visiting the newly launched version of our corporate website at www.gotostrategic.com. How to embrace corporate storytelling for impact and influence. It's a timely topic for a couple of reasons. First, research conducted by analysts points to the rise of the enlightened buyer. Your prospects and customers now spend more time on their own to define needs and evaluate solutions. Marketers have responded by creating and publishing thought leadership content. Rather than promotion or public relations or marketing materials, many of your peers now focus on telling stories to engage and educate customers and prospects. But how do you do that effectively? Second, as we all know, markets are dynamic and fast-moving. Emerging trends, changing customer needs, and competitive threats inspire companies to take action. Medtronic is a good example. The company is a global leader in medical technology and services. Earlier this year, Medtronic closed its $50 billion acquisition of Covidien, another healthcare technology and medical supplies provider. The resulting organization has a broader portfolio of solutions and a more diverse customer base. This, of course, created a need to tell an updated corporate story to key stakeholders. This morning, we're fortunate to be joined by Fernando Vivanco, Senior Director of Corporate Communications at Medtronic. During our discussion, Fernando will share more about his professional background, as well as the best practices his team has employed to tell a corporate story for impact and influence. I also want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, CEB. CEB is a best practice technology and insight company. In partnership with leading organizations around the globe, they develop innovative solutions to drive corporate performance. You can learn more about CEB by visiting their website, www.cebglobal.com. Before we get started, there are a couple housekeeping items I'd like to quickly cover. First, our discussion today will run about 20 minutes, and we will have time at the end for Q&A. If you have a question, please enter it into the chat box in the right-hand column of your screen, and it will be sent directly to me. In follow-up to today's event, we will send you by email a replay of the discussion. You will also be able to download a replay in the Resource Center on Modern Marketing Today at www.modernmarketingtoday.com. This is an online magazine that reports on the trends, technologies, and best practices relevant for today's modern marketer. So let's now welcome in Fernando to talk corporate storytelling for impact and influence. Fernando, good morning. How are you today?
Hi, good morning, Mark. Thank you.
So let's start by having you share with our audience a little bit about your professional background, places where you've worked, things you've been responsible for, and how you've now arrived at Medtronic.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. So, currently I lead internal and external communications at Medtronic, as Mark mentioned. But looking back at my career, I have a mix of working for nonprofit organizations, PR agency, as well as corporate experience. I've been very fortunate to work with some of the world's leading brands. Looking back at my PR agency days, working with clients such as Nintendo, Ticketmaster, REI, and then moving on to the corporate side with Boeing, then Honeywell, and now Medtronic, which, as you mentioned, is the global leader in medical technology. So, if I look back at my career, I think I've been very fortunate to work on many high-impact, career-defining initiatives. So from leading communications for the world's largest aerospace company across all of Europe, Russia, the Americas, and part of Asia Pacific, working or managing crisis communications during airplane accidents, also being at the forefront of introducing web and email connectivity in flight, and then as well as leading communications activities in support of probably still the largest homeland security contract granted by the government after 9/11, where Boeing was responsible for working to ensure that there was 100% baggage screening at all U.S. airports. So, as you mentioned, Mark, I recently joined Medtronic. We just recently closed on a highly visible $50 billion acquisition of Covidien, and so we've now doubled in size and we're going through the challenges of integrating these two large companies. So from a, think of your internal stakeholders, your external stakeholders, just the integration of these two large companies, harmonizing our culture, presenting one face to our customers now. Those are some of the challenges that we're going through at this point.
Yeah, so let's dive into this because you raised a very interesting point here regarding the Covidien acquisition. Can you talk a little bit about how this transaction, and then maybe even some other market changes, evolving customer needs, kind of the needs of your customer, employee, investor base, has really resulted in your team looking at this need to evolve its corporate story. So talk to us a little bit about market changes, changes within Medtronic, and how this has then influenced how you've thought about how to basically articulate Medtronic's story in a very compelling way.
Sure. It's actually interesting. We're in the process of rolling out our new branding strategy here in the next few weeks. But to take a step back, a lot of the work that we actually did, and this even started before I joined the company, so I've got to give credit to my colleagues, but a lot of the work actually started well before the acquisition of Covidien. When we announced the acquisition of Covidien last summer, we were actually in the process of beginning to roll out our new brand internally. What we did, Mark, is we decided to pause, take a pause, and then take a step back and validate or test a lot of our positioning, a lot of the work that we had done, go back into the market, test it with stakeholders in, I think, 10 or 12 different countries around the world. What we wanted to do was, before we spend a lot of money and investment in rolling out this new brand, we wanted to make sure that we were going to hit the mark with the, now that we've doubled in size, was our positioning still relevant? And what we discovered was with the addition of Covidien, it actually strengthened most of the work that we had already done. And I think that, the research showed, or one of my interpretations of that is that the branding work that had been done and the validation with the addition of Covidien, I think it's a testament of how our positioning and a lot of our communications and marketing strategy was clearly interlinked to the business strategy. So the business strategy didn't change. I think the Covidien acquisition was helping us further or accelerate that business strategy. The communications and marketing strategy was always tied to that business strategy, and so it just strengthened it from that point. So if you look at now, Medtronic, over the last couple of years, we started to refine or better articulate the business strategy. And, Medtronic is focused on three core strategies. One, it's really around innovation of our therapies, globalization, and then this whole economic value discussion. So these three strategies, they're really designed to create more of a competitive advantage for Medtronic, by capitalizing on some of these long-term trends in healthcare. So, for example, first, that continued desire to improve clinical outcomes with patients. Then you have that growing demand for expanded access to healthcare all around the world. And then third, it's really about optimizing cost and efficiency in the healthcare systems around the world. So going back to the acquisition of Covidien, we've significantly advanced that position, our position as the world's leading or premier medical technology and services company. And so it's really an exciting time to be here at Medtronic.
Okay, this is interesting. So lots of different changes going on, not just the acquisition, but just kind of the continued evolution and maturation of the company. You've gone through a process of research in a variety of different markets. And this is something, it's interesting. I'm going to deviate from kind of our normal conversation here just for a second because we actually talked about this, I guess, a few days ago. Fernando, tell us a little bit about why you actually, or why Medtronic actually went through the process of testing its message in different geographies. I mean, you would figure for a global company, all right, you've got your set corporate messages, that's going to play whether you're talking about the Americas or you're talking about Europe or you're talking about Asia. Why kind of the globalization check there?
Well, you want to make sure that as you tailor the messaging, you tailor your approach in these various countries, you want to make sure that it resonates with your stakeholders, right? And so when you're going to make a big investment, a company like Medtronic or most others, they roll out a new brand every several years. So it's a very cost cost-intensive initiative to undergo, and you want to make sure that you get it right. We had hunches that the messaging or the approach was still going to be valid, but Medtronic being an engineering company at its core, the core of its DNA, the company really values data and facts and data. So when we said, hey, let's put a pause here, we had lots of excitement, lots of energy behind this. As I mentioned, we had already started to roll this out with our top 400 leaders across the company, had started doing some training, but we just thought, it's the right thing to do. Let's take a pause. Our positioning statement is really around the tagline of further together, and what the intent there was, how can we move healthcare together, further together amongst all stakeholders? And what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that various internal and external stakeholders, when they saw the tagline of further together, that they wouldn't interpret that as being now Covidien and Medtronic are going further together. And so we didn't want that misinterpretation to occur in the marketplace. But as we went out and we tested it, it's still, our various stakeholders in these countries still viewed our positioning as Medtronic, the legacy Covidien and Medtronic coming together, still being that key stakeholder, being able to partner with stakeholders around the world to take this healthcare further together. So we just wanted to make sure we got it right.
Awesome. All right, so we've got this new brand initiative that is going to be rolled out in the coming weeks. Fernando, can you spend a couple minutes talking to our guest this morning about how is Medtronic going to be articulating its messaging to the marketplace? I mean, things have changed so dramatically with social and digital communications. Plus you've got those kind of tried and true communications activities like, your traditional media relations and public relations and presentation and those sorts of things. Can you talk a little bit about your content and distribution strategy?
Sure. Let me touch on that a little bit. So first of all, patient stories have been and will continue to be an important part of Medtronic storytelling. And it's not unique to Medtronic. You see other companies in sort of the healthcare, med tech space really do a lot of patient stories, very inspiring stories that will always be core to a lot of what we do. Storytelling in healthcare also faces many challenges from a regulatory perspective. There are policies, there are restrictions in place that limit what words you can use, what claims you can make, and it can be very complicated, Mark, especially when there are rules about the distribution of that content. You have rules that can vary from country to country. So we have to be mindful of that. So what we are embarking on now is we're starting to launch this new messaging framework that's really going to help articulate what our business strategy is and what it means to various stakeholders. And what we're trying to do is with this framework, I mentioned this further together, and we have 4 key messaging pillars that we want to roll all of our content or our initiatives through. The reason why we've got this framework is we want to ensure that we have consistency in how we communicate about ourselves and what we say to the marketplace. And so we're really trying to be disciplined and run, view all of our content creation through the lens of this messaging framework that we have in place. So the other thing that's been successful is that we continue to strengthen the partnership between, communications and our colleagues in marketing. We're both aligned in the same initiative. We're also looking at, how do we tighten that consistency of both our verbal and our visual brand? And so what people are going to start seeing is you're going to start seeing a more deliberate pull-through of our verbal and our visual in everything that we do. So like I said, we're going to be rolling out our new brand in the coming weeks. And as part of that, Mark, is in recent months, what we've done is we've trained more than 200 employees across the enterprise, and these are employees who are involved in content creation. Think of communications, think of your digital people, your web, your marketing, your Marcom. Train 200 of these employees around the world you know, so that we have that consistency in that verbal and the visual brand. And as we roll out the new brand here in the coming weeks, we're also going to be training our more than 85,000 employees on the new brand, because employees are also those brand ambassadors. And so as we start making a more deliberate push into that storytelling, we're increasing our video storytelling. We're investing more in infographics. We're looking at how we continue to leverage our own social channels. Just going back to the 85,000 employees, we're thinking about how can we create very compelling content such that our employees will also want to share that through their networks, through their social networks as well. So that's one piece of it. You touched a little bit from a media relations perspective. If you look at our business strategy, it's really helping introduce Medtronic to new stakeholders around the world. So how do we follow that from a media relations perspective? One of the things that we're looking at doing is we're looking to engage with new media outlets that traditionally have not covered us, but that would reach these new stakeholder groups. So, we certainly have a ways to go. We're excited. We're trying to really drive everything that we do through that lens of this messaging framework with that overarching goal of doing a few things. One is, obviously we want to, solidify our role or our expanding role in healthcare. We want to strengthen our brand in the marketplace. We want to drive new forms of stakeholder engagement, stakeholder discussions. We want to signal to the market, to our current stakeholders that understand us and new stakeholders about the evolution of our company, and really try to broaden that perception of Medtronic. And ultimately, we want to be invited to new conversations, new partnerships, and new business opportunities. So, I mentioned that we're getting ready to launch this brand. We've had an integrated approach between marketing and communications. We're still trying to refine and work through that model. What does it look like? I'll be honest with you, it's new for us, and but we're all committed to all hands on deck. Let's make the launch successful. But then the challenge is going to be, how do we sustain this over the long term? I think launching it is sort of the easy part, arguably the easy part. I think the hard part for us is going to be, how do we really continue to sustain this over the long term? So, in the coming days, a small group of us who've been really involved in helping drive a lot of this, we're going to take a pause and do sort of a post-mortem to understand what's worked well, what needs to be improved from a process perspective in this, content generation perspective, the content creation. How do we bubble up ideas or story ideas across the business? How do we work within that regulatory and legal framework that I mentioned? How do we make content that's relevant or of interest to stakeholders all around the world? And so, exciting times. We've made good progress, but there's still ways to go here.
Okay. So what's really struck with me, Fernando, is, so you've talked about, consistency in messaging across the organization, and you referenced two very interesting numbers, roughly 200 plus communicators across Medtronic dealing with now more than 85,000 employees, which is just a staggering number. Many of our guests today work for smaller organizations, obviously, where they don't have a communications team that runs in the hundreds. Maybe there's only a handful of them. But the impression I'm getting, or the point I'm getting to, is that with every organization, every key corporate communications person now has to have kind of a more diverse set of skills. Let's talk about this for a second. Can you talk about, just as Medtronic goes through the process of evaluating the skill sets that are required for a communications person there at the company, what are some of the different things that you're looking for now as compared to maybe 10 years ago when you were just looking for kind of a core corporate PR person or someone that has kind of a marketing collateral writing background? I just get the sense that you're looking for people that maybe have a more diverse set of skills. Am I on base on that?
No, sure. Let me just clarify. So the 200 folks that we train, those are not pure communications people. Okay. This is everybody involved, everybody in the corporation that's involved in the creation of content, both from a verbal and a visual perspective. So your traditional PR people, internal communicators, external communicators, marketing, marcom, digital, social, anybody, designers, and that also includes training, all of our agency partners as well, whether it's advertising agency, PR agencies, graphic designers. It's training everybody who touches that content creation, both from a verbal and a visual perspective, so they understand the brand. So, I understand that other companies may not have that many folks, but I think the principle is still the same, ensuring that anybody who's involved in the creation or generation of content from a verbal or a visual perspective has a basic grounding, or that everybody's working toward the same framework. Does that make sense?
Okay, it does, absolutely. All right, so let's now hit you with the all-important and often tough question about success metrics and measuring impact. So this is a major initiative that you are a part of at Medtronic. A lot of time and effort and thought and now resources gone into this. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you and your team are going to be measuring the impact of this new corporate branding program, both near-term impact and as well as maybe even some long-term, success benchmarks or metrics that you're trying to hit?
Sure. So, I mentioned earlier that Medtronic at its core is an engineering company that values facts and data. So as a team here, we strive for, research-based communications activities. And, like many other companies, we regularly conduct primary, secondary research to understand awareness amongst, our various internal and external stakeholder groups. We monitor media coverage, social media. We conduct surveys with our employees and customers. For a lot of this campaign that I touched on, some of the desired outcomes that we have, Mark, are we want to measure, is there a measurable lift as it relates to Medtronic in the areas of, increased partnerships? Are we showing progress that we're part of the solution for healthcare? Is there a measurable or identifiable set of new invitations to partner or collaborate with, healthcare systems, with governments, or other data and technology partners? Are we being recognized in the healthcare business community that Medtronic is evolving from a medical device manufacturer company to a broader healthcare company in the system? And is there evidence that we're being thought of as a thought leader in this whole new area of value-based healthcare? So those are some of the things that we're looking at measuring. Obviously, some of these have more, some of them are short-term, some are medium-term, and some are more longer-term types of goals that we'll be measuring, Mark.
Okay, awesome. So Fernando, I've gotten a couple of questions in here from our audience. So let's dive into this in just the few minutes that we have remaining. So the first question is, and I'm going to read it as it's been sent to me. So like Medtronic, my company is also a leader, although admittedly in a much smaller market. I'm curious, how tuned in is Fernando to how Medtronic's competitors are positioned in the market, and does that influence Medtronic's strategy? So interesting. So you're keeping your eye on your competitors, Fernando?
Well, we're certainly aware of what they do. We see what they do. We're aware of what they do. But that doesn't drive what we do from a communications perspective and our communication strategy. What we really try to do is the communication strategy is very much linked to the business strategy. So that's really our focus. We're aware of what our competitors are doing, but from a communication strategy perspective, we're really tied to that core business strategy and helping move that forward.
Okay, great, got it. Next question: if asking Fernando to do this, if you were to look 5 years down the road, how does Fernando think the role of corporate communications will continue to evolve? All right, you got to get your crystal ball out, right, Fernando?
That's an interesting one, and I'm sure you'll get 20 different answers if you ask 5 people on that. A few things I think that we'll see a few years down the road are, I think, today you have communicators that specialize in, social or video or external or internal. I think that, a few years down the road, you'll see a more versatile communicator that will view those capabilities as tools in the toolbox. I think that you'll see more video storytelling, more influencer relations. One of the things that doesn't go away, and I think will only increase in importance, is having a stronger understanding of business, not only your company's business, but the business in which the business environment in which your company operates in. I think one thing that we all sort of struggle with is data and analytics. I think an increased importance in understanding of data, being able to analyze that data, and being able to share that whole return value of communications, using data and analytics to identify trends before they become major issues facing your company. And I'm sure that you and others on this webinar probably have a whole host of other ideas of what corp comms will look like.
Awesome. Well, Fernando, let me thank you so much for your time this morning. This has been a very interesting discussion. I will keep my web browser tuned to medtronic.com to see how the company's brand and your story evolves over the next couple of weeks, so that's very exciting. I also want to make sure that I thank our sponsor again, CEB, accessible at www.cebglobal.com. And it's just as a reminder to our guests, we will send you a replay of today's discussion by email, or if you want to see it more quickly, you can download it in the Resource Center on Modern Marketing Today at www.modernmarketingtoday.com. Fernando, once again, thank you very much, and I will wish everyone an enjoyable day.